Alrighty then. Well, made it. A little bit later than I wanted, but I made it. Alright. Well, welcome. Finally made it to do our read aloud, guys. Sorry that it was a little having to message back and forth with some of the stuff at Haviland. But now I'm here, ready to go. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everyone's doing all right. There's another cold day today, cold day in Michigan. At least it's Wednesday. I can at least say that I remembered today was Wednesday. Feel like everything else is in a time vortex, so it's like everything condenses in and it's all the same. Probably the quarantine's getting to me a little bit. Maybe that's part of it. Hey Zach, how you doing today? You made it. I was just saying that myself. I was starting to think I wasn't going to make my 2 o'clock time, but I finally made it. I haven't started the book yet, so you made it, Zach. All right, so guess we'll get going with our book. Now that my phone is blowing up, I'm going to silence that so it's not a distraction. All right. So, poached. A lot of things happened yesterday. Ben had his conversation with Christy. Christy shared with him that she doesn't know what to believe about who took Kazoo the koala, but she believes that Teddy didn't do it, and that, Marge has got, a bug up her thinking that, has it in for Teddy, and based on the security footage of Teddy entering and leaving Koalaville, it leads to, and no one else entering or leaving during that time. Marge has got very dead set to go after Teddy and basically throw the book at him. But we learned that Christy had a couple theories. There's a couple people that she suspected. One being Charlie Connor, the actor that we met just as Ben was entering the land down under, the guy that, made it a career doing a show where you goaded a dangerous animal to attack you. And he lost a show because, well, it turns out you're not supposed to goad dangerous animals into attacking you during a live show. And we had, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy from the first book, that the little short guy that you guys like to laugh at because he was shorter. Though don't laugh at the little people. They don't like that. That's not nice. But it was the guy that played Larry the Lizard that she thought that he might be involved in this. And when Teddy's dad picked him up by Carnivore Canyon, they went to an area where they could borrow someone's office in Carnivore Canyon to watch the security disc, because Teddy's dad wanted to show Teddy why exactly Marge and security think Teddy is the one. Shows that he's the only one entering the exhibit and leaving and looking rather suspicious both times, and that he entered a security code to get in that the Fungical security staff didn't know existed. They realized that there was a code in their system that no one knew about. Of course, it's J.J. McCracken's, and he lets, his daughter Summer use it, but he hasn't told anyone, and nor has he told security that it was his code that they used. So there's that reason why security is very dead set on Teddy, because he looks pretty guilty at this point. Unfortunately, the gentleman who they were borrowing their office, he ended up calling security, and we ended the chapter yesterday with Marge and Officer Stackhouse blocking the way with the rest of Funjungle security, and Marge looked pretty sure of herself, very smug, had the handcuffs out, said, "Teddy, you are now under arrest." She looked so happy to throw the book at Teddy. So let's see what happens to Teddy today. Chapter 8. Chaos is the title of the chapter. Dad shot a look of betrayal at Arthur. "You tipped them off?" Arthur couldn't even bring himself to meet my father's gaze. "Face the facts," he mewed. "Teddy is guilty." "Mr. Fitzroy, please step away from your son," Bubba Stackhouse said. It was the first time I was seeing him up close. He was a big man in every way. He was at least 6.5 feet tall. His shoulders seemed to be 4 feet across. Muscles bulged under his shirt, but a large belly did too. He had a big nose, big ears, and a huge anvil jaw. Even his voice was big. It boomed and echoed inside the cave like a depth charge. We'd like to make this as easy as possible for everyone. Instead of doing what Bubba had asked, Dad stepped in front of me, the way a buffalo would to protect its young from predators. "Teddy hasn't done anything wrong." Bubba's muscles tensed and "I don't want to hurt you, sir, but I will if I have to get what it takes." "I'm not worried about me getting hurt, Dad. I'm worried about Teddy. I don't think there's any need to put handcuffs on him. He's only 12. "I'll be the judge of what's necessary." Marge stepped forward as well, twirling the cuffs. "Now step away from the boy." And to my surprise, Dad complied. He suddenly shifted to the side, leaving me in the open. Marge and Bubba loomed over me. I felt like a shrimp facing a pair of whales. "Turn around, Theodore," Marge said, "and put your hands behind your back." I looked to my father nervously, expecting him to stand up for me. Instead, to my surprise, he gave me a slight nod. So I did exactly as Marge had asked. I turned around, put my wrists together at the base of my spine. "Good boy," Marge said, like I was a dog. She took a step closer, still twirling the cuffs. Dad suddenly sprung into action. He snatched the cuffs off of Marge's finger before Marge even knew what was happening and locked one around her left wrist. "Hey!" Marge shouted. Bubba spun toward Dad. He reflexively raised his fist. Dad snapped the other handcuff around Bubba's wrist. Bubba grabbed him, but as his right arm was now cuffed to Marge's left, his reach was suddenly cut short. Dad easily leapt out of range and then yelled, "Teddy, let's go!" I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the exit. Arthur Connick lunged for me, but I easily dodged the traitor. He slammed face first into one of the computer monitors and gave a squeal of pain and crumpled to the floor, clutching his bloody nose. Dad and I raced out of the control room. Marge and Bubba charged after us, though the two of them didn't coordinate their steps right. They crashed into each other and took out a full desk of computer equipment. Dad led me back the way that we had come in. Behind us, we could hear Marge screaming in rage and in frustration. She was so angry that she couldn't even form words. Instead, she sounded like a wounded animal. Where are we going? I asked Dad. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm making this up as I go." We barged through the exit by the otter exhibit and startled a few tourists as we burst onto the landscaping. Although Marge's angry howls echoing through the tunnel scared them even more. "Sounds like something's escaped," one of the tourists yelled, and everyone fled in fear. A few more park guests near the lion exhibit overheard them and ran as well. Given that a tiger had escaped Carnivore Canyon during the grand opening gala, their reactions actually made sense. Dad and I reached the entrance to Carnivore Canyon and found several security guards racing toward us from the center of the park. We turned toward the back gate, and the guards were blocking that as well. There was only one way for us to go. For the second time in 2 days, I found myself running toward Koalaville. The number of guests fleeing Carnivore Canyon had snowballed, and the approaching phalanx of guards now confirmed everyone's fear that an animal had truly escaped. Panic set in. The tourists screamed and scattered across the park, not so much seeking safety as trying to outrun all the other visitors, thus let them get picked off first. The guards made no attempt to calm the frightened guests. Instead, they charged after me and Dad. Marge and Bubba emerged from Carnivore Canyon and joined the chase. Bubba was surprisingly strong, man. Marge would have been like an anchor to most people, but the policeman was dragging her right along with him. Dad and I raced toward the crowded kazoo merchandise brazier, and then stopped short on the other side, scanning the length of the back fence. What's wrong? I asked. We shouldn't have come this way. Dad sounded upset with himself. It's a dead end. So what do? Create a diversion. And then, at the top of his lungs, Dad yelled, "The lion is out!" Everyone in the braziers started in fear, and then noticed their fellow tourists panicking over at Carnivore Canyon. They dropped their koala merchandise and scattered. Within a second, the entire shopping area became pandemonium. People were screaming and running everywhere, and a shelf full of commemorative kazoo snow globes toppled and shattered. The security guards lost us in the chaos. Dad and I doubled back, using the racks of sweatshirts as cover, and circled around the koala exhibit. Despite everything, that there was still a line of tourists at the door. Either they hadn't heard the warning about the escaped lion, or they were so determined to see Kazoo that they were willing to risk being mauled to do it. Dad and I came around the backside, hoping to find a path to freedom. Instead, we found trouble. Bubba Stackhouse was smarter than we had thought. He had kept an eye on us and swung around to cut us off, bringing Marge with him. They ambushed us, blocking our escape. Dad and I had no choice but to veer into the exhibit. We bulldozed in through the exit. The teenager posted there to make sure that this didn't happen tried to chastise us, but Bubba and Marge flattened him before he could do so. The exhibit was even more crowded than it had been earlier. Tourists were packed 4 deep at the glass, staring at the stuffed toy back in the trees. The newlyweds were still there, having spent an hour and a half patiently waiting for the fake koala to move. Christy had resumed her post at the podium. Pete Thwacker was now with her. Apparently, the PR man had dropped by to see for himself how well his ruse was working. As always, Pete looked impeccable. His hair was perfectly combed, his teeth gleamed blindingly, and he wore a fancy suit that probably cost more than our trailer did. The crowds were too thick for Dad and me to wiggle through. We were trapped. Marge and Bubba cornered me by the glass. "Everyone stand back," Marge ordered. "This kid is dangerous." Her voice was surprisingly commanding. The crowd obediently cleared the way for me, as though I was contagious. Only Dad remained close. Once again, he placed himself between me and the authorities. "Leave my son alone," he warned. "If you obstruct justice again, we will arrest you too," Bubba growled. "Your son is guilty of a serious crime." "What crime?" Dad taunted. "It seems to me that Kazoo was right there." He pointed through the glass. Bubba looked into the exhibit and gaped in surprise at the koala. Evidently, no one had informed him of Pete's amoral cover-up. Dad took advantage of the diversion to try to slip by with me in tow, but Bubba instinctively grabbed for us with a free hand. Dad expertly deflected it, grabbing Bubba's wrist and twisting his arm down. Bubba, being a good old boy who'd probably had his share of fights, responded to the attack by trying to punch Dad in the face. Unfortunately, Bubba forgot he was handcuffed to Marge. Marge had already started toward Dad, and now the force of Bubba's massive swing yanked her off balance. Dad darted out of the way as Marge sailed toward him. She slammed into the glass wall. Most animal exhibits are built with extremely strong shatterproof glass, but Koalaville had been thrown up so quickly there hadn't been time to get it specially made. Marge hit the glass hard and pulled Bubba along with her. The glass didn't stand a chance against the two of them. The enormous pane shattered into a million pieces. Marge and Bubba stumbled into the exhibit and slammed into the eucalyptus tree where the fake Kazoo sat. I think you guys could see where this is going. The koala tumbled from its perch and landed on its head. And then Marge and Bubba fell on it. The tourists had watched the intrusion into the exhibit in stunned silence. But now, seeing what appeared to be Kazoo's lifeless limbs sticking out beneath Marge and Bubba, that's when the screaming began. Tourists of all ages, men and women alike, quickly freaked out. They killed Kazoo! The bride wailed, and several dozen other people echoed her. I stole a glance at Pete Thwacker. His normally tan skin had now completely drained of color. He looked as though he had just swallowed a porcupine. Beside him, Christy Sullivan appeared to be laughing at his expense. People, please, Pete yelled over the din. I assure you, Kazoo is not dead. He's not moving, the groom yelled back. They crushed him. Oh, this is terrible. A few adults rushed to Kazoo's aid and tried to pry Marge and Bubba off of the prone koala. However, Marge and Bubba, neither being very spry to begin with, were tangled up together and having a great deal of trouble getting up. Mothers and fathers tried to shield their children's eyes from the carnage. Most of the children, however, were equally determined to see it. Other guests wept. Still, some others had dialed 911 and were currently being told the emergency services only responded to human emergencies, not marsupial ones. However, a majority of tourists were now using their phones to record everything that was happening. I noticed at least 20 filming the corpse of Kazoo. A few more security guards burst in through the exit, preventing Dad and me from running. I'm not sure that we would have, though. The disaster unfolding before our eyes was too riveting to ignore. Even the newly arrived guards forgot about us as they saw what had happened. Apparently, none of them were aware that Kazoo was a fake either. Upon seeing the flattened koala, a few broke down and cried on the spot. Finally, with a mighty yank, one of the tourists managed to extricate the koala from beneath Marge. Or at least he extricated most of it. The head popped off, leaving the koala's savior holding only a body of a doll. At the sight of this, more gasps and screams erupted from the crowd. The bride faded. The man holding the koala, however, grew enraged. He turned on Pete and Christy, the most obvious representatives of Fun Jungle present. This is a toy, he yelled. A new wave of gas rippled through the room. Everyone stared at the headless, pancaked koala in shock, unsure whether or not to believe this. For the moment, Pete was at a rare loss for words. Not a good thing if you're a press relations person like Pete Thwacker. You always have to have like the last word to say. If you're speechless and you're a PR person, that's bad. Unsure of whether to admit that koala was a fake or claim that it was actually dead. In a panic, he went with his standard gut response, lying. It's not a toy, he argued weakly. The man holding the fake koala pointed dramatically to where the head had been torn free from the body. Instead of blood and guts spilling out, there was only cottony white stuffing. I'm pretty sure this isn't natural, the man said. Every head now swiveled toward Pete, who grew even paler. Christy, fearing the wrath of the crowd, stepped away from him and pretended not to have been conned herself. Where's the real koala? She demanded. What have you done with Kazoo? Pete shot her a glare of betrayal, then tried to address the tourists. Kazoo has temporarily been removed from the public view, he began. Without telling us? The mother cried. That's reprehensible. Was there ever even a real Kazoo? The groom demanded, still trying to revive his unconscious bride. Or was this all just a plot cooked up by Fun Jungle to take our money? Much of the crowd angrily seconded this thought. I assure you, Fun Jungle has done no such thing, Pete told him. Then tell us where Kazoo is, one of the park's own security guards demanded. Pete started to say something, but then caught himself. I knew Pete well enough to guess what he had been about to tell. Another lie. Perhaps that Kazoo had been sent to a nice, relaxing koala spa for a few days to deal with the stress of being on display, but had realized that sooner or later this would be uncovered as well, and that he and Fun Jungle would end up looking even worse than they did now. Where's Kazoo? More people demanded. If you have a real koala, then prove it, the groom ordered. Pete stammered. He didn't have much practice telling people the truth. The thing is, well, Kazoo, he isn't dead. He's he's not exactly here on these premises at this time. Well, where is he? Asked the man clutching the remnants of the emergency backup koala. He's been kidnapped, said Large Marge. The crowd gasped again, swung back to face her. She was now on her feet, pink from the embarrassment of the exertion of brushing glass shards off of her uniform. He was taken last night. The crowd now reacted with a wide range of emotions. Some had been more horrified than they had been before. Others were still angry by the deception. I saw astonishment, shock, confusion, and everything in between. The bride, who had just regained consciousness, had now fainted once again. Marge focused her beady eyes on me, but continued to speak to the crowd. However, we are in the process of apprehending the number one suspect at this very moment. We have evidence that this boy is responsible and expect him to reveal the koala's whereabouts soon. The gaze of everyone in the room had now shifted once again, and it was now to me. 2 security guards seized me from behind. When Dad tried to intervene, 4 more grabbed him. The crowd exploded. No one seemed to know what to believe anymore. People were shouting at me, shouting at Marge, and at Pete, and shouting at the security guards. He couldn't have done it, someone declared. He's just a boy. But the other people were glaring at me hatefully. Where's Kazoo? One demanded. What have you done with him? I never touched him, I replied. I've been framed. Marge and Bubba stormed toward Dad and me over the carpet of glass shards, which cracked and popped beneath their feet. At a nod from Marge, the guards quickly marched us out of the exhibit. We emerged into Fun Jungle to find the place completely desolate. While we'd still been dealing with the chaos inside, everyone outside had evacuated, still fearing the escaped lion. Pete Thwacker and Christy Sullivan followed us. Pete was walking backwards so he could talk to the angry crowd. I don't have the time to answer all your koala-related questions at this moment, he said, but I can assure you full details will soon be available on our website. The crowd roared in disapproval. They wanted to know more. Marge's radio suddenly cracked to life. Marge, this is Tracy. Pick up now. That was Tracy Boyd, Fun Jungle's manager of operations, second in command only to J.J. McCracken. She sounded angrier than a tiger that had been poked with a stick. The security guards all looked at Marge, too, concerned. I'll talk to her later, Marge said. We'll deal with Teddy now. She made a move to turn the radio. Don't you dare turn that off, Tracy said. Marge froze, startled. I'm watching you on the security cameras, Tracy explained. Marge gulped. She picked up her radio and then responded. Security Chief O'Malley? I want you to report to my office this instant, Tracy told her. Right now, we're in the process of apprehending a known felon. I could see what you're doing. It can wait. In fact, I want you to bring Teddy as well up here. I want all of you here. This is a whole darn circus. Now. And tell that idiot Thwacker to come too. Me? Pete asked, worried. But there was no answer. Tracy was now off the radio. Christy turned to Pete with a devilish told you so grin. So, she said, looks like a fake koala wasn't such a good idea after all. All right, chapter 9. The Threat. Today was not just a disaster at Fun Jungle, Tracy Boyd said. It's a catastrophe. I was seated in her office, along with Dad, Large Marge, Bubba Stackhouse, Pete Thwacker, and half of the security staff. It was a large room on the 4th floor of the administration building, with windows that looked out over the entire park. Another wall of Tracy's office was filled with TV monitors. Some of these were connected to the park security cameras, which was how Tracy had known about the latest Kazoo catastrophe almost as soon as it happened. Other monitors were tuned into various television channels, ranging from the local news to CNN to Animal Planet. All three local TV stations had interrupted their usual daytime programming to broadcast the latest news from Fun Jungle, and the local anchors didn't know what to cover first: the escaped lion, which they had yet to determine wasn't real, or the revelation that Kazoo had been kidnapped. Out of the windows, I could see 3 news helicopters circling Carnivore Canyon searching for the lion. And then on the TVs, I could see the live aerial footage that they were shooting. Tracy was tall, with long, thin legs like a giraffe, and had a mane of dark hair. When she was excited about something, she could be extremely effusive. Unlike Martin Delgado, the previous director of operations on Fun Jungle, Tracy really liked animals and often could be found interacting with them with great joy. But when she was angry, as she was now, she could be terrifying. Even a giant like Bubba Stackhouse seemed to be afraid of her. It was a fiasco, Tracy went on. A calamity, a complete and utter cataclysm. In the future, students learning about how to run a zoo will study this day as a shining example of incompetence, foolishness, and idiocy. Everyone looked at their shoes, ashamed. Tracy then shifted her attention to Pete Thwacker. I assume it was your numbskull idea to put a toy koala on display? Pete did his best to meet her. You told me to keep the theft a secret, he said. No, I told you to keep a lid on the story, Tracy snapped. I thought you were going to say the exhibit was closed for maintenance. The guests got upset when they came all that way to see the zoo to find their favorite animals not on display, Pete explained. All right, Tracy said. Thank goodness we didn't upset any guests then. Instead, we completely horrified them. First, they witnessed what they thought was the brutal death of Kazoo due to blunt trauma. And then you went and revealed that Kazoo had been stolen anyhow. Pete winced. I thought it was better. It was better than everyone thinking the koala was dead. They knew the koala wasn't dead, Tracy roared. They figured that out when they noticed it had stuffing coming out of its neck. What they are upset at, and rightfully so, is the idea that they've been conned, duped, bamboozled, hoodwinked. When Tracy got angry, she had a weakness for synonyms. Behind her back, many park employees called her Thesaurus Rex. I'm sorry, Pete said weakly. It was a mistake. You darn right it was, Tracy cried. It was a blunder, a beanball, a total boner. And because of it, every media state is calling for our heads on a stick. And the rest of the country isn't that far behind. So you need to get out there, face the music, and own up to this. Admit that this was your lame brain idea, not the park's, and that your actions in no way represented park policy. Pete nodded obediently. And what do you want me to say about the kidnapping? First of all, don't call it a kidnapping. It's not a kidnapping until we get a ransom note. And we don't have one of those yet. This is a thief. This is a theft. But as for what to say about it, heck, I know. That's your job. Whatever it is, just make sure the park sounds good. Should I offer a reward for anyone who helps find the perpetrator? Pete asked. Tracy thought for a moment, then sighed. I suppose we better. Let's say $20,000. Maybe that will remind people that we're a business that cares about animals rather than the business that scams its customers. And while we're at it, we better offer free park passes to anyone who came to see Kazoo today. Consider it done. Pete sprang to his feet, happy to have permission to leave, even if it meant eating crow in front of the press. There's one more thing, Tracy said, freezing Pete in his tracks. The only reason that you still have a job right now is because I don't have anyone else to undo your mistakes. So you better take care of this mess or I'll can you. You understand? Yes, ma'am, Pete said meekly, and then scurried out with his tail between his legs. Large Marge instantly raised her hand and waved it in the air like an eager student with a question for the teacher. Tracy then turned to her. What is it, Marge? I don't understand the point of offering a reward to help catch the perpetrator, Marge said. We've already caught the perpetrator. Right there, she pointed to me. I started to defend myself, but before I could, Dad jumped in himself. There is no proof that Teddy stole the koala. Yes, there is, Marge argued. We've got him leaving the exhibit on tape. Without a koala, Dad said. His backpack, he has a backpack that was big enough to hide the koala in. That doesn't prove anything, Dad told her. It does when no one also entered the exhibit, Marge shouted. Teddy goes in, there's a koala. He comes out, then there's no koala anymore. He took it, case closed. Then where is it, Dad demanded. You searched our house this morning and didn't find so much as a hair. Then Teddy hid it somewhere else, Marge growled. In the woods, maybe. Wherever it is, I'll find it. Before Dad could counter this, Tracy stepped into the fray. Enough of this, she said. Silence. Clam it. Dad and Marge both fell silent. Face the facts, Tracy told Dad. The evidence against Teddy is awfully conclusive. Marge grinned at this, but then Tracy swung back to her. However, given the disastrous events today, which you played no small part in, and the beating we are about to take in the media as the result of them, there is no way I'm going to let you arrest this young boy for this crime without an ironclad proof that he did it. The last thing we need right now is to claim a kid took Kazoo and then find out that he didn't. Marge sagged like a popped balloon. But he's our number one suspect, she whined. If we let him go, he might skip town. No, I won't, I said, because I didn't do it. Why not? You won't? Tracy told me. Because we're going to ensure you can't. She looked to Bubba. What would it take to outfit Teddy here with an ankle bracelet? Bubba shrugged. Not too much. What's an ankle bracelet? I asked. A radio transmitter that we lock on your leg, Marge informed me, so that we could tell where you are at all times. I've got some in the car right now, Bubba said. He started up again. Hold on now, Dad said. No one is fitting Teddy with one of those. They're for criminals. He is a criminal, Marge replied, glaring at. We just haven't proved it yet. And until you do, Teddy will be able to go about his normal life, Tracy ordered. She looked to Dad. He can return to school, stay at home, or move about the park at will. The only difference will be that he has a tracking device on him. So if it turns out that he is indeed the thief, then we will know where to find him. Dad held her gaze for a moment. I don't like it, he said. Not at all. Well, tough, Tracy said, because that's what we're going to do. And in the meantime, your family's going to fully cooperate with Marge's investigation. Dad looked to me. I'm okay with that, I told him. I don't have anything to hide. All right, Dad said with a sigh. But I like to point out that every minute spent investigating Teddy is a minute that no one's looking for the real thief. We're not focusing on Teddy to inconvenience you, Tracy told him. We're doing it because at the moment he's our number one suspect. Either he's a criminal or he's a foolish little boy who's only in a mess because he did a lot of things that he shouldn't have in the first place. Now, everyone was staring at me, though only one that I was ashamed to be looking at was my father. Tracy Boyd was right. I'd got myself into a heap of trouble on my own. Large Marge smirked at me, but Tracy then turned on her. And as for you, let's have a few less catastrophes and a lot more careful investigating here. Teddy's father is right. If Teddy is innocent, then you've given the thief a big head start. So you better either bring me proof that Teddy did this, or you find the real criminal fast. The Australians are going ballistic about this. And if we don't get that koala back, we're going to have an international incident on our hands. Every day that goes by, Kazoo's situation goes more and more desperate. So if he isn't recovered soon, or if we have any more disasters like today, heads will roll. You understand? The smirk disappeared from Marge's face. Yes, ma'am, she said. Good, Tracy said. Then everyone here is dismissed. Except Teddy. She met my father's surprised stare. I'd like to talk to him solo for a bit. I'm not comfortable with that, Dad began. You can wait right outside the door if it'll make you feel better. Tracy, I'll leave it unlocked. We'll be only 10 minutes, if that. Any longer, you can feel free to come right back in here. Dad glanced at me. I nodded that I was all right. 10 minutes, he told us, and I'll be right outside. He filed out behind all the security guards. Marge let him exit before her and then took one last shot, long, hard look at me, wondering why I merited a one-on-one with Tracy and she didn't. Then she stormed out and slammed the door behind her. Tracy let the silence hang for a few seconds, allowing me to grow uneasy. She finally asked, Did you take the koala, Teddy? No, I said, but I have some ideas of who might have. Tracy wasn't expecting that. She stiffened in surprise. Really? Well, they're not my ideas, I admitted. They're Christy Sullivan's. She says Freddie Malloy had a grudge against Kazoo. Freddie? Tracy rolled her eyes. Let me guess, the idiot thinks the koala cost him his show somehow. Not the fact that he routinely traumatized the audience. Yes, Christy said that he threatened to throw Kazoo into the gator pit. Tracy grimaced. Who else? Charlie Connor. He's been looking for a way to get some money out of Fun Jungle. Tracy sighed, then dutifully wrote both names down on a legal pad. Anyone else? A rich animal collector named Flora Hancock. She might have hired Charlie to swipe Kazoo for her, or maybe she had someone else do it. Tracy wrote down that too. Any more? I shook my head. Why didn't Christy tell me any of this? Tracy asked. She told Marge, I said, but Marge didn't do anything. Tracy sighed again and then tapped her fingers on her. How exactly did you come to learn this from Christy? She told me. Really? Of all the people Christy could go to, she tracked down a 12-year-old boy accused of a crime. Well, she didn't track me down exactly. I happened to be in Koalaville. Why? I squirmed in my seat, aware Tracy wouldn't like the answer. I was sort of investigating. Tracy stared at me for a long time and then said, Teddy, there's a lot of people at this park who say that you are a great help at finding out who killed Henry the hippo. But there are also a lot who claim that you're just a nuisance who stuck his nose where it didn't belong. They're wrong, I protested. No one would have even known Henry was murdered if it wasn't for me. I highly doubt that, Tracy told me. However, I do know that Henry's funeral wouldn't have been much such a disaster if it weren't for you. That's not entirely my fault, I argued. The bad guys were after me, and I was only trying to escape. In addition, you were also linked to the escape of a tiger from the Carnivore Canyon and the disappearance of a black mamba from the world of reptiles, a mamba that still hasn't been recovered. You've been accused of arming chimpanzees with water balloons, spreading rumors that the meat in our hamburgers is kangaroo, and teaching parrots to say bad words on Spanish. And now, in the past 2 days, you've planted a fake arm in the shark tank and been involved in the destruction of the koala exhibit. Tracy came out from behind her desk and approached me. Now, I don't know if you took Kazoo or not, but I do know that wherever you go at this park, chaos and mayhem often follow. I don't like chaos and mayhem, not at all. So from this point forward, you are going to stop these shenanigans. I want you to lay off of the cheap pranks. I want you to stay far away from this investigation. If you can't, if there is one more PR disaster that I find that you're even remotely connected to you, I'll ban you from this park forever. I can't stay out of the park, I said. I live here. Both of my parents work here. That can change, Tracy told me. It took me a second to realize what she meant, and once I did, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You mean you would fire my parents? Yes. Because of me? I wouldn't want to, Tracy said. Both your parents are extremely valuable assets to this park. However, at a certain point, the trouble that you've caused outweighs the worth to us. Fun Jungle is already in a tenuous financial situation. We can't handle another event like this. Tracy pointed to the wall of TV monitors. The screens were all now filled with coverage of the chaos in Koalaville. Tourists had already uploaded the video to YouTube of Marge crashing through the koala exhibit. Every news station was running it now. I caught a glimpse of myself ducking out of the way just before Marge sailed through the glass. My parents love it here, I pleaded. Please don't fire them. I don't mean to cause all this trouble. Whether you mean to or not, you cause it, Tracy said, and that needs to stop. Cease and desist. Come to an end right now. If it doesn't, I'll have no choice but to let your parents go. All right, guys, that is the end of chapter 9, and we're going to stop there for today. I will post another assignment on Dojo where you guys can name 3 things that you remember that happened over the 2 chapters. And I think I'll add that you guys need to add a prediction of what you think is going to happen in tomorrow when I read. So I will let you guys know on Dojo when I will go live again. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I'm building a game with my friend. All right, Zach, you're having a conversation with Evan. All right. See you later, guys.